Senator Josh Hawley is asking President Biden to drop support for Ukraine's NATO membership. The Missouri Republicans sent a letter to Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Tuesday asking how Ukraine's membership in NATO would serve U.S. interests. Hawley reiterated his support for sending assistance to Ukraine, but said that the U.S. interest is not so strong to warrant going to war with Russia if Russia attempts to invade Ukraine. Hawley argued that a commitment to defend Ukraine would undermine efforts to counter China. Such a deployment can only detract from the U.S.'s military ability to ready and modernize forces to deter China in the Indo-Pacific, Hawley writes, arguing that American security and prosperity rest upon our ability to curtail Beijing's dominance. Here's Hawley defending his position on Tucker Carlson.
If we expand NATO, it means that the United States will be providing additional security guarantees that will be more embroiled in European conflicts. This isn't the time for that. We can't do everything. The United States can't do everything. We've got to focus on the safety of the American people, and the number one threat to that abroad right now is China, in addition to, of course, our problems on our southern border.
Okay, so White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki accused Hawley of regurgitating Russian talking points. Here's that.
Senator Hawley was out in a statement today saying that the president should sort of take NATO membership off the table for Ukraine, and that wasn't in U.S. interest to do that. Do you think that sort of rhetoric or sort of position by a U.S. senator right now is helpful in this showdown between the West and Russia?
Well, if you are just digesting Russian misinformation and parroting Russian talking points, you are not aligned with long-standing bipartisan American values, which is to stand up for the sovereignty of countries like Ukraine, but others, their right to choose their own alliances, and also to stand against, very clearly, the efforts or attempts or potential attempts by any country to invade and take territory of another country.
Yeah. So obviously, if you are against war with Russia, then you are actually against a long-standing bipartisan American value, which is war, right? So the really interesting part here is that Hawley's position is gaining support amongst Republicans, though he's historically at odds with a pro-war GOP. And we know that Democrats have been laying the groundwork to dramatically increase U.S. security assistance to Ukraine. And after Biden's deployment of troops last week, it begs the question, is the GOP actually becoming the anti-war party? Makes us question this. Adam Kinzinger called Hawley one of the worst human beings and a con artist after Hawley urged Biden to block Ukraine from joining NATO. But of course, Kinzinger is a co-sponsor of a recent bill that expresses support for the NATO alliance and increased alliance cooperation on opportunities and challenges. So first of all, I just want to say I don't agree with Josh Hawley on a lot of things. And one thing in particular with this entire segment, what he's talking about in regards to China, I don't agree with him. I don't actually think that China is a giant threat to U.S. security in the same way that we've been threatened. I don't think China is attempting a war with the United States. I don't think that they're a military threat to the United States. They can be. I mean, look, you don't want to mess with another country with any nukes, right? So, of course, I wouldn't say that they're benign and not a threat. Of course, they have the military capability. They certainly have the numbers of people to be a threat. I just don't think that they're trying to pick a military fight with the United States. China hasn't seemed, besides building up their own military and doing exercises off the coast of China, they're not going around building bases around the world. They have one base outside of China, and that's in Djibouti in the Horn of Africa, where we also have a base. That's the only foreign base China has. China is a threat to the United States in that China is economically outpacing the U.S. and is economically going to end up replacing the United States as the new world power. That is the issue. And we know, as the United States has shown many times over, that if you are the world power, then you get to exert your power on others, and you get to force others into doing what you want them to do. And I don't think any of us want to be beholden to China in any way. I don't think any of us want to have to do what China says because China says so. That is obviously not something the United States should want. We should want to be an equal world power, just like many other countries would want to be equal world powers, just to avoid being beholden and bullied by another nation. But I don't think China is a military threat to the United States. I think what they're doing is they're building up partnerships and allies around the world. And they are going to, again, get to the point where economically they've essentially bought everybody through partnerships and through investments, and we won't have any real sway. The United States way of going about it has always been to bully and bomb, and China's way of doing it is through partnerships and strategy. So I don't agree with Josh Hawley that we need to be focusing our military attention onto China. I don't think that's where we need to be focusing. I think we need to be building up the economy of the United States, strengthening the average citizen. We're only as strong as our weakest link. We need to be smarter. We need to be healthier. We need to be faster. We need to be more efficient, right? We've got all of these things that we need to do in order to combat China, but it's not through military might. We need to be strengthening our partnerships. We should be going around, rather than mean mugging China and saying we got bigger bombs than you. We should be going around to the same partners that they're trying to partner with and doing better deals with those partners, enticing them into our corner or influence, or at least to where they're not favoring one or over the other. They remain neutral. Our best bet is to get other nations to be neutral. So I don't agree with Hawley on that front. However, to say, Jen Psaki, to say, well, these are Russian talking points. I'm sorry, but the average American doesn't want to go to war with Russia. So that's actually an American talking point, Jen Psaki. That is the average American talking point. Is it the talking point of the military-industrial complex? No, you're right. It isn't. It's not in line with the bipartisan, long-standing American value of war, but we're over it. We don't want it. We certainly don't want it with Russia. And none of us understand the benefit of having Ukraine, for one, in NATO, and two, why does the average American need to defend Ukraine? NATO has gotten to a point of expansion, ridiculous levels of expansion. And you have to remember what NATO is. It's an alliance. So the alliance very clearly states that if you are invaded or if I am invaded, we come to each other's defense. We help each other out in the event of an invasion, amongst other things, but that's the big one. So if we bring Ukraine into NATO and Russia does eventually annex these areas that are, by the way, not under the control of Ukraine and haven't been for nearly a decade now, the area, the Donbass that's in question, has not been under Ukrainian control since 2014. So that is under rebel control. Pro-Russia rebel control. They are Russian-speaking. Many of them are ethnically Russian. They've been asking to join Russia. Russia has said no, but Russia could change their mind and they could say, okay, fine, you can be a part of us. After all, Russia's been issuing passports to the people living in this area because Ukraine won't. It's an area at war with Ukraine. So Russia's already been doing a lot of the diplomacy in that area, the humanitarian aid in that area, helping ensure that the people aren't trapped and that they can travel. Russia's already been doing that. So if Russia were to annex it, what does it matter to you or I when those people that are living there, many of them, half, if not more than half, want to be part of Russia? A lot of the others want to be separate from either country. They don't want to be a part of either. And there's a minority of people in the Donbass that want to be reunited with Ukraine. So wouldn't we want to do what the people in that area want to do? Because we can't go and fight for a region of Ukraine that won't even fight with us. They'll fight against us. They'll fight against us. I mean, this is insane to think that we're going to go in there and defend an area that doesn't want our defense. So, but going back to NATO, we added, for example, Montenegro to NATO. Do you know where Montenegro is? Do you know how big Montenegro is? It's not big. It's small. If Montenegro is to be invaded now, we have to go to the defense of Montenegro. That is part of the NATO pact. But what is Montenegro going to do for us if we get invaded, let's say, or if a European nation were invaded? Are we going to rely on all of the soldiers coming from tiny, tiny Montenegro to come to our aid and our defense? I mean, this is the ridiculousness of the alliance, is that it really should be reciprocal. We help protect the UK. The UK would come to our defense. Same with France, same with Germany, same with all of the other NATO nations. Many of them, though, we are their military. They don't really have one, like Germany and Italy. But the alliance is meant to be a quid pro quo. And we need to be asking, do we expect, what kind of benefit are we getting out of Montenegro being added to NATO? Now, Montenegro was added just to be an offense to Russia. It's a beachside town where a lot of Russians live. They've got tons of property there. The population is heavily Russian. It's their vacation spot. And we added Montenegro to NATO just to piss them off, quite frankly. So we need to be asking, Are we building this alliance because we genuinely need the defense from these countries, or are we building this alliance to piss off Russia? And it looks like we're just trying to piss off Russia. That's what it looks like. So Josh Hawley is absolutely right. We don't want you. Most of us Americans do not want Ukraine and NATO. We don't need Ukraine and NATO. There's a lot of other NATO nations, like the Baltic nations, that we probably could release from NATO. That's what Russia's demanding. They're saying, you guys said you weren't going to be expanding east. You have. You've now started soaking up a lot of the Warsaw Pact. You said you wouldn't. Okay, maybe there wasn't an actual official agreement on that, but we took you for your word. How good is the American word after all? So we should be probably not only not expanding NATO, but we should probably be honestly dismantling NATO and reforming a new alliance based on better principles other than just countering the Soviet Union, which no longer exists. This is how ridiculous it is. Time to get rid of NATO. I'm on board with Josh Hawley. I say let's get rid of NATO. I don't know if he's saying totally get rid of NATO, but I'm saying get rid of NATO. I'm saying form a new alliance if you feel you need one. Russia's not a threat to Europe. Russia's not a threat to us. Russia is okay, Ukraine and Russia, they were both in the USSR. They've got a internal thing going on. None of our business. And that is the sentiment of most Americans, Jen Psaki, not this long-standing American tradition of war. If you like this content, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also, be sure to join me on my locals at my locals community. That is where you'll see some live streams, and also we just post some other content, including more of my personal life and whatnot. All of that is over there on locals if you're interested. Also, please be sure to join me if you're not watching on Rumble. Join me on Rumble. That is where I put up some content that is not to be found on YouTube. It's also on my Rockfin channel, which is another great platform. If you'd like to go there, a lot of independent people are both on Rockfin and on Rumble. Great places to be. Please be sure to check it out. Links are down below. If you have any questions, comments, email me, kim@kimiversen.com. Thanks for watching.